In the quiet hours before dawn, when the veil between worlds grows thin, there exists a whispered truth known only to those who dare to listen. A truth woven into the very fabric of the cosmos, etched in the shadows of forgotten temples and the silence between stars. It is the truth of the seven lords that answer only to Thoth, enigmatic beings who dwell at the intersection of wisdom and mystery, guardians of secrets so profound they defy the linear grasp of mortal minds. To speak of them is to step onto a path where knowledge becomes alchemy, where words are not merely spoken but unveiled, and where the act of understanding is itself a sacred initiation. Thoth, the ancient scribe of the gods, the measurer of time and the weaver of language, stands as the sole arbiter of these seven lords. They are not gods in the way we conceive of divine beings, lofty and distant, demanding worship, but rather as living principles, as currents of consciousness that flow through the unseen architecture of existence. Each lord governs a domain of hidden order, a facet of reality that remains obscured until one learns to see with more than eyes. To know them is to decipher the codes of creation, to read the invisible ink with which the universe writes its grand design. Imagine, if you will, standing at the edge of an endless library, its shelves stretching into infinity, each book a universe unto itself. The air hums with the weight of unspoken knowledge, and in the stillness, you sense a presence, not one, but seven, moving like shadows cast by a single flame. They are the keepers of the unwritten, the interpreters of the unsaid, the ones who turn the pages of fate when Thoth himself gives the command. Their names are not mere words but keys, their forms not fixed but fluid, shifting like sand beneath the winds of perception. To encounter them is to dance with the unknown, to surrender to the understanding that some truths are not meant to be held, only witnessed. Why, then, do these lords matter to us, here in the realm of the tangible, where the weight of daily life often leaves little room for the esoteric? Because they are the hidden hands that shape the unseen forces governing our lives, the silent architects of synchronicity, the quiet guides of intuition, the unseen weavers of the patterns that emerge when logic falls short. They are the reason a dream can feel like a prophecy, why a chance encounter can alter the course of a lifetime, why the right words arrive at the precise moment they are needed. They are the whispers behind the curtain of the ordinary, the ones who remind us that reality is far stranger, far more interconnected than we dare to believe. To walk with the seven lords is to step into a world where meaning is layered, where every symbol carries echoes of a deeper truth, and where the act of seeking itself becomes a form of communion. It is not a path for the faint of heart, for it demands the courage to question, the humility to admit how little we truly know, and the willingness to see the world not as a fixed thing, but as a living, breathing riddle. Yet for those who dare, the rewards are immeasurable, not in gold or glory, but in the expansion of vision, the deepening of insight, the slow and sacred unraveling of the self into something greater. So let us begin this journey not as scholars armed with certainty, but as travelers with open hands and open hearts, ready to receive what the lords, in their infinite mystery, may choose to reveal. For in the end, it is not the answers that define us, but the questions we are brave enough to ask. Core themes and concepts. To speak of the seven lords is to speak of the hidden order beneath chaos, the silent syntax of the universe that Thoth alone has mastered. They are not rulers in the earthly sense, nor are they deities bound by myth. They are currents, forces, living echoes of the principles that underpin all things. Each lord embodies a facet of existence so fundamental that to name them is to invoke the very architecture of reality. Yet their essence cannot be confined to mere description. It must be felt, intuited, glimpsed in the spaces between thought and word. The first lord is the keeper of thresholds, the guardian who stands at the doorways of transformation. Wherever one era ends and another begins, wherever a mind sheds an old belief or a heart steps into uncharted emotion, there this Lord presides. Its presence is felt in the vertigo of change, in the breath held between what was and what will be. It teaches that every crossing demands a surrender, that to pass through any gate is to leave some part of yourself behind. Then comes the scribe of shadows, the recorder of all that goes unwitnessed. While history books chronicle the deeds of kings and empires, this Lord inscribes the untold stories, the dreams that faded by morning, the prayers murmured into silence, the choices made in solitude that nevertheless ripple across lifetimes. Its domain is the ink of the subconscious, the parchment of memory, and it reminds us that the unseen is no less real for being invisible. Third is the weaver of paradox, the spinner of riddles that unravel certainty. This Lord thrives where logic falters, where opposites embrace, where light cannot exist without darkness, where loss and gain are two faces of the same coin. It is the force behind every koan, every moment of sublime confusion that cracks open the mind to wider understanding. To encounter this Lord is to be stripped of easy answers, yet strangely enriched by the questions left in their wake. The fourth Lord, the architect of echoes, governs the labyrinth of cause and effect, but not in the linear way mortals perceive. Its design is one of resonances, where an action in one lifetime may reverberate in another, where a word spoken in jest may return generations later as prophecy. It is the reason déjà vu prickles the skin, the reason certain places hum with the weight of unremembered events. Its lesson is simple: nothing is ever lost, only rearranged. Fifth stands the Chancellor of Whispers, the cultivator of intuition. This Lord is the hand that guides the hunches we cannot explain, the sudden knowings that arrive like gifts from nowhere. It speaks in the language of symbols, in the flicker of omens too precise to dismiss as coincidence. To heed its voice is to learn that the rational mind is but one instrument, and that the soul has its own ways of listening. The sixth Lord, the alchemist of silence, is the master of the unspoken. Its power lies in pauses, in the gaps between notes that make the music, in the unsaid words that hang heaviest in the air. It teaches that silence is not absence, but a presence, a fertile void from which all meaning springs. In a world drowning in noise, this Lord is the reminder that some truths can only be heard when the clamor ceases. Lastly, there is the sovereign of cycles, the keeper of time's spiral. Unlike the crude ticking of clocks, this Lord moves in rhythms, seasons within seasons, endings that are beginnings in disguise. Its gaze is the reason civilizations rise and fall in patterns, why love returns in forms both familiar and strange, why the self is not a fixed point, but a story retold with each revolution. Together, these seven form a constellation of understanding, a map to navigate the unseen dimensions that shape our lives. They are not doctrines to memorize, but currents to attune to, each offering a lens through which the world reveals deeper layers of itself. To know them is to recognize that the mundane and the mystical are not separate realms, but different frequencies of the same reality. Deeper symbolic narratives. There is a story whispered among the temple scribes of a lost city, where the walls were said to breathe with the knowledge of Thoth himself. It tells of a seeker who came to the gates of this city not in search of gold or power, but of an answer to a question he could not name. The guardians, 7 figures robed in shifting hues, barred his path. Each of us holds a key, they said, but none may pass until the question is known. The seeker, desperate, cried out to the empty sky, and from the silence, Thoth's voice unfurled like a scroll. To ask rightly, you must first unlearn the need for an answer. This is the first parable of the Lords, the trial of the unformed question. The keeper of thresholds does not bar the way out of cruelty, but because the act of waiting, of wrestling with the unknown, is itself the forge in which true seeking is shaped. The seeker in the story does not fail. He is being remade. Every frustration, every moment of doubt, is the chisel stripping away his certainty until only the raw, trembling core of his need remains. Another tale, older still, tells of a woman who sought to record every detail of her life, convinced that if she could capture each moment in perfect script, she might cheat death of its oblivion. For years she wrote, her shelves groaning under the weight of her obsession. One night, the scribe of shadows appeared, not as a judge, but as a companion. Without a word, it began to transcribe not her deeds, but the spaces between them, the sigh she stifled when weary, the unfinished thought that flickered behind her eyes, the love she never confessed. When she saw these pages, she wept, for at last she understood. It was the unwritten that had defined her all along. Here lies the second teaching. The unrecorded is the truest chronicle. The Lords do not traffic in the obvious, but in the subtle, the overlooked, the whispers that slip through the cracks of our attention. Then there is the fable of the scholar and the mirror, in which a man of vast learning comes before the weaver of paradox, clutching a tome of all the world's known truths. "Show me what lies beyond this," he demands. The Lord gestures to a mirror, but when the scholar peers in, he sees only his own reflection, until he blinks, and in that split-second darkness, the image shifts. Now it is a child, now an old man, now a stranger, now a beast. "Which of these is you?" asks the weaver. The scholar, trembling, admits he does not know. "Good," says the Lord. "Now you may begin to learn." This is the third revelation. Certainty is the death of wisdom. The Lords dissolve borders, turn axioms into questions, and remind us that the mind, like the universe, expands most when its edges are undone. Perhaps the most haunting story is that of the architect of echoes and the broken vase. A woman, grieving the shattering of an heirloom, rages against time's cruelty, until the Lord shows her the fragments not as ruin, but as seeds. One sliver will become a glazier's inspiration, another will lodge in a king's foot and alter the course of a war, another will be ground to pigment in a masterpiece. "You mourn the form," says the architect, "but the essence has only begun its journey." Thus unfolds the fourth lesson. Nothing ends, it only changes its song. The remaining Lords weave through tales of a sailor who learns to navigate by the chancellor of whispers' unheard melodies, a poet who discovers the alchemist of silence in the pause between heartbeats, and a dying emperor who, in his final moments, sees the sovereign of cycles in the faces of his ancestors and descendants alike. Each narrative is a cipher, not to be solved, but to be lived, a mirror held up to the soul's own unspoken stories. Practical integration and real-world implications. To engage with the seven Lords is not to escape the world, but to see it more clearly, to recognize their fingerprints in the ordinary moments that shimmer with hidden depth. Their wisdom does not belong to some distant celestial realm. It lives in the quiet epiphanies that arrive unannounced, in the synchronicities that thread through our days, in the choices that ripple far beyond what the eye can measure. Consider the keeper of thresholds when standing at life's crossroads. Not just the grand, dramatic junctures, but the subtle shifts, the decision to speak or stay silent, to hold on or release, to follow convention or carve a new path. This Lord teaches that transformation is not a single event, but a daily practice of small surrenders. Each morning, when the mind hovers between sleep and waking, there is an invitation to ask, "What old skin must I shed today?" The answer may come as a fleeting instinct, a sudden clarity about a habit that no longer serves, or a relationship that demands honest reckoning. Thresholds are everywhere if we learn to perceive them. The scribe of shadows reminds us that history is not merely written in books, but in the unacknowledged currents of our lives. What goes unspoken in a family shapes its future as surely as any will or inheritance. The thoughts we dismiss as trivial, the daydreams we neglect to pursue, the kind words we swallow, these too are part of our legacy. To honor this Lord is to pay attention to the margins of our awareness, to keep a journal not just of events, but of the whispers beneath them. In doing so, we reclaim the power of the unseen narrative. When faced with paradox, love that feels like both anchor and chain, success that brings both joy and emptiness, the weaver of paradox offers not resolution, but expansion. Modern life demands black and white answers, but this Lord invites us to dwell in the fertile gray. A practical exercise. Next time you face an impossible choice, write 2 letters, one arguing each side, then burn them. The truth often emerges in the smoke. The weaver's gift is the ability to hold opposites without needing to crush them into false unity. The architect of echoes manifests in the eerie resonance of certain actions. A kindness shown to a stranger circles back years later as unexpected aid. A harsh word spoken in stress poisons a relationship in ways unseen until it's too late. This Lord's lesson is profound in its simplicity. Act as if every deed is a stone thrown into eternity. Before making significant decisions, pause to trace their potential echoes. How might this choice ripple through your future selves? Through generations unborn? The practice is not about control, for echoes defy prediction, but about reverence for the interconnectedness of all things. The Chancellor of Whispers speaks through intuition, that oft-ignored compass. Practical integration begins with rebuilding trust in these subtle cues. Start small. When thinking of someone unexpectedly, contact them. You'll often find they needed exactly what you offered. When a path feels wrong despite logical advantages, dare to deviate. Record dreams upon waking, not to interpret them immediately, but to observe patterns over time. The modern world shouts. The Chancellor's wisdom arrives in the spaces between shouts. In an age of constant noise, the alchemist of silence becomes radical. Practical application: designate soundless hours, where words, even internal narration, are set aside. Walk without podcasts. Sit without scrolling. Let the silence work its alchemy. You'll notice 3 transformations. First, anxiety about unfinished tasks diminishes, for noise often feeds the illusion of control. Second, creative solutions to long-standing problems arise unbidden. Third, you begin to hear the distinct tones of different silences. The silence after laughter holds different wisdom than the silence after tears. The sovereign of cycles appears in the patterns we're too close to see. Keep a lunar journal for 3 months, noting energy shifts, recurring themes, and unexpected convergences. You'll begin to discern your personal rhythms, when to push forward, when to rest, when to release. This Lord also teaches the art of timely endings. Learn to recognize when a project, relationship, or identity has completed its cycle rather than propping it up artificially. In business, this might mean sunsetting a once successful initiative before it sours. In love, it means releasing what has already fulfilled its purpose instead of clinging to its hollowed shell. These practices are not escapes from reality, but ways of engaging with reality's full depth. The Lords don't ask for worship, but for attention. The kind of attention that transforms grocery store encounters into minor epiphanies, that turns setbacks into sacred lessons, that reveals the extraordinary woven through the ordinary. Conclusion and transformational call. We began this journey standing at the edge of an infinite library, sensing the presence of the 7 Lords moving like shadows in the dim light. Now, as we prepare to close this volume, we must ask, what remains when the last word fades? Not answers, for the Lords deal in mysteries, not manuals, but a shift in perception, a quiet rewiring of how we move through the world. The true power of these 7 Lords lies not in their otherworldly grandeur, but in their insistence that the sacred and the mundane were never separate. Thoth's scribal wisdom was never meant to be locked away in temples. It lives in the way a conversation suddenly opens unexpected doors, in the déjà vu that stops you mid-stride, in the perfect book that falls into your hands at precisely the right moment. The Lords are not distant overseers. They are the patterns beneath the surface of things, waiting to be recognized. Consider how your life might change if you approached each day as an initiate in this subtle order. When faced with change, whether chosen or thrust upon you, you might sense the keeper of thresholds at your shoulder, reminding you that all transformations begin with release. The pang of loss would still be real, but beneath it you might detect the thrill of a story rewriting itself. In moments of decision, the weaver of paradox might appear in the tension between choices, teaching you that some truths can only be held in balanced contradiction. You'd grow comfortable saying, "I don't know," without anxiety, understanding that uncertainty is the birthplace of wisdom. The architect of echoes would turn your attention to the interconnectedness of actions, how today's patience might bloom into next year's breakthrough, how a single act of courage could alter destinies unseen. You'd move through the world with greater care, not out of fear, but from reverence for the web you're forever weaving. Most importantly, you'd come to understand that initiation into this mystery requires no special rites, only attention. The Lords speak constantly. We've simply forgotten how to listen. They're in the coincidence you dismiss, the dream you forget by noon, the sudden knowing that arrives without explanation. To walk with them is to restore an ancient conversation between the soul and the world. And so the call is this: begin where you are. Keep a notebook of synchronicities. Sit with paradox instead of rushing to resolve it. Notice when life whispers rather than shouts. The transformation won't come in lightning strike revelations, but in gradual dawning. The slow, sure realization that reality has been alive with meaning all along, and you are no mere bystander, but an active participant in its unfolding story. The library never closes. The lords never sleep. The next chapter is already being written, not by distant deities, but by your own living, questioning, ever-awakening hands. The seven lords have whispered their secrets, but this is only the beginning. The true magic unfolds when wisdom becomes action, when the veils we've lifted together ripple outward into the world. If these mysteries have stirred your soul, let the journey continue. Lend your voice to the chorus of seekers by joining our sacred circle. Press subscribe, awaken the bell of notifications, and let no revelation pass you by. Drop a comment below with the Lord who resonates most deeply within you, for your words are the ink with which we'll write our next chapter. Remember, the universe rewards those who dare to listen closely and act. Will you answer the call?